What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I'm bringing you a meta-analysis for the October 2018 format. YCS Niagara is the first YCS of this new format and just concluded this past weekend. And since Soul Fusion just released and Thunder Dragons came out, we have a lot to talk about because the meta is starting to look different for once, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited for that. So before we get into it, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single upload. And if you really love the meta-analysis or any of the other content that I produce, then consider supporting me on Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member, because it's thanks to people like Christopher that I'm able to bring you this content on a daily basis. So if you're interested, hit the join button down below or check out the links in the description. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So here is the pie chart for the top 32 breakdown of YCS Niagara. Now, YCS Niagara I think only had about 700 to 800 players. This is pretty typical for a Canadian YCS. I think they've gotten around 1,000 before, but I'd say this is about average. And it's really interesting as well because Soul Fusion debuted essentially the day before this tournament. Now, obviously the sneak peek was the prior week, but that is going to influence, some factors here in terms of the cards being available, as well as, people kind of knowing what Thunder Dragons or any of the new cards may do. So that's definitely something to keep in mind here. But as you can see, Thunder Dragons managed to take up a majority of the top cut slots. I believe it took up 9 of the top 32, so just over 25%. And honestly, I think Thunder Dragons definitely overperformed. I think myself and a lot of other people tempered their expectations for Thunder Dragons just because we know that the deck is good, but I think I was overestimating the number of players that were going to compensate for the fact that Thunder Dragons were going to be a big part of this event, especially since it's the debut event. That's something that really does play a role because new cards, new deck, people may not know what the cards do, may not be familiar with how to, kind of fight against a certain strategy. So that's kind of an inherent advantage you have of playing a brand new archetype. And it kind of went to show that Thunder Dragons seem to be doing pretty well since they did take up a majority of the top cut. Now, as you got further down the line of the top cut placement, I think it managed to make it all the way up to top 4, and that's something that's pretty cool. It didn't end up winning, but I think this is a pretty good first showing because honestly, Thunder Dragons are a very powerful deck. This is something that myself and a lot of other people have been talking about just solely because of the fact that Thunder Dragon Colossus and Thunder Dragon Titan are two incredibly powerful cards, especially in this particular metagame. And with the strategy of just spam as many Colossus and Titan onto the field as possible and basically just make your opponent answer that, if they don't have an answer, you're probably just going to win on the next turn, and that's what Thunder Dragons do really well. Now, what's going to be interesting is that YCS London is taking place this upcoming weekend at the time of recording this video, so we're going to see how this impacts their metagame because there are a couple things you have to keep in mind. First off, Summon Sorceress was legal for this event because it is an event that's in this territory, so that's something you have to keep in mind because Summon Sorceress, kind of makes some other decks, which we're going to get to a little bit later, much more viable. But the second thing is that now that Thunder Dragons have shown that they're able to dominate an event, then now we're going to see a shift in basically people trying to combat that as best they can. But we're going to get into that a little bit later. Thunder Dragons looking pretty strong though, moving forward. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next popular deck, which was Goki. That's right, Goki still managed to take up 25% of the top cut slots, and honestly, Goki's still doing what it does best. Now, Goki's kind of shifted into a bunch of different directions. I think the most popular build was a Dark Goki variant, which is kind of like Dark Warrior, just playing a very small Goki engine. This did end up taking first place. Shoutouts to Gabe, our NAWCQ 2018 winner, winning this YCS as well. Congratulations to him. I think it's really cool to see that a deck like this has kind of evolved to this point while also adapting to the fact that Thunder Dragons are a deck you have to take into account. Because if you think about it, Colossus can stop this deck just as well, but at the same time, it is still able to just pump out extra links. It's able to Gumblar you for 4. It's able to do a lot of very powerful things. It hasn't really changed that much since our previous tournaments or anything like that. So definitely something you're going to want to consider moving forward, at least if you're in the TCG US region. TCG Europe, I don't think has to worry about Goki as much, although it is still very viable. I think Summon Sorceress kind of takes this deck over the top in a lot of different ways. Now this is going to go ahead and move us on to our next set of decks, and they're kind of all jumbled together here in the Danger icon, but there were several different Danger decks that managed to make the top 32. There were 3 Danger Dark World FTK decks, there were 2 Danger Burning Abyss decks, and then there was also 1 Danger Spiral deck. Now, again, we kind of decided to clump all these together just because they all incorporate the Danger cards, and this is really the first big showing for, I would say, Danger in general, even though it's kind of taking advantage of several different archetypes. I mean, you could say it's Burning Abyss over Danger, you could say, you know, it's Dark World over Danger, but I think it's cool to see that now Danger is starting to show the versatility in the cards available in the archetype's disposal. When it comes to Danger FTK, this is something that's been around since, you know, even before Soul Fusion. It's been around for a couple weeks, maybe even a month, and I think the first time I saw and at least heard about it was Michael State on Pro Play Games' channel talking about it. I think the new cards in Soul Fusion made the deck a little bit more consistent, which definitely, you know, the fact that 3 Danger FTK decks top, not to mention one of them made it all the way to the finals, goes to show that this is definitely a strategy to look out for. However, a lot of players were also banking on the fact that no one was going to be playing a card like Droll and Lockbird. Droll and Lockbird is almost completely just out of the format. The only time you're really going to see this card is if there's someone randomly playing it, or if you're going up against someone playing Trickstar, just because Droll and Lock naturally fits in that deck because of Trickstar Reincarnation. This is a really big deal because Droll and Lockbird literally shuts the entire FTK down. I remember reading one of the feature matches, I think it was either Jeff Jones or Max Reynolds, saying that they were hoping that no one was going to be playing Droll and Lockbird because that's how fragile the deck is to this specific card. So while yes, Danger Dark World FTK is something to look out for, it is also very fragile to certain cards as well, and if the metagame shifts to a point where we're going to start seeing a lot more Danger Dark World FTKs, while yes, it is an FTK, there are a lot of ways to stop this, and I think a lot of people are going to start taking note of that, having more options in their side deck, maybe some more hand traps to help combat this FTK so they don't just automatically lose to it. So I think that was a very interesting call for this particular event since Droll has pretty much been phased out of the meta. We'll just have to see if Droll decides to reincorporate itself as a result of this. Time will tell. But then Danger Burning Abyss, you know, we've seen this deck do well before. It hasn't really had a good showing like this. I think it's won a regional once or twice, but other than that, it's kind of just been here or there on the regional level. But now getting, you know, a pretty good showing on a YCS level with 2 of them making the top cut. Burning Abyss is still doing what it does. You know, it's the deck that will never die. Pretty solid option too. I mean, it could have its difficulties against Thunder Dragons, but honestly, the deck is still very solid. It's one of the most resilient decks in the format, and I really don't think it's going anywhere, and I think you're going to see a lot of people at YCS London playing it as well, just because Europe tends to like Burning Abyss a lot more than America. Then there's the 1 Danger Spiral deck. You know, this is just one of those one-off decks that managed to make it in there. We've seen Faisal Khan piloting Danger Spiral as well. It's still a pretty strong deck. If you're going first, your goal is to make Tomahawk with, you know, Master Plan and Nessie, and if you go second, you can pretty much OTK them doing the traditional decode OTK. Nothing really too spicy there, but still pretty awesome that a Danger Spiral managed to make it that far. It makes me really excited. But there are still some other decks we do have to cover, one of them being Sky Striker. Yeah, remember Sky Striker, the former best deck of the format? I can't believe we're talking about it this late into the video, but Sky Striker fell hard this event, only taking up 4 of the top 32 slots. That is a very significant nosedive compared to where it was previously, and I think there's a couple reasons for this. I think people were underestimating the sheer amount of Thunder Dragon that was going to be at this tournament. The deck is still very strong, but Thunder Dragon has a very good matchup against it just because when you have multiple copies of Colossus on the field, even if you draw your 1 Widow Anchor, you need to have multiple Widow Anchors or multiple outs in general to be able to shut off all of their Colossus or Colossi, I guess, and that way you're going to be able to play. But if you can't do that, it's going to be very difficult for you to establish anything and get anything going. I think Thunder Dragons can put enough pressure on the deck that it's definitely an issue, and I think people didn't really respect that. Now, I do think that now we've seen Thunder Dragons having a very good slot in the meta, I think we're going to start seeing Sky Striker players tech their deck specifically for the matchup, maybe playing more copies of Impermanence, maybe starting to main deck Book of Eclipse. There's a lot of different outs that Sky Strikers could incorporate, and I think that's the direction we're going to see the deck go, because the deck is still very good, but I think people underestimated the power of the deck for this specific tournament. We'll just have to wait to see what YCS London's metagame ends up looking like. But the last deck I wanted to talk about is Altergeist, because Altergeist only took 2 of the top 32 slots at this event, and this also came as a shock to me because I was under the assumption that, assuming Thunder Dragons are going to be extremely popular, which they were, Altergeist has a very good matchup against the deck. Now, it's not like an auto win, but it's like a very, very good chance, just because everything that Thunder Dragons do doesn't really affect Altergeist. Altergeist has built-in outs to stuff like Colossus. There's a lot of advantages that Altergeist has over Thunder Dragons, and we've seen this in the OCG as well. But Altergeist really underrepresented at this tournament, especially in Top Cut. But I think what we're going to see happen is, and we saw this happen in the OCG, is that for YCS London, we're going to see a lot more Altergeist players come out, because if they don't want to play Thunder Dragons, or Thunder Dragons they presume are going to be the best deck, Altergeist seems to be the best deck to be able to counteract it. So we're going to see a massive influx of Altergeist players going into YCS London. That's just my prediction, but this did happen in Japan, and I think we're going to follow a similar trend. We'll just have to wait and see, but really crazy that Altergeist only had 2 slots in that top 32. There are a couple other decks. There was a Trickstar Mech Knight deck that made top 32, and a Paleozoic player that I think managed to make the top 4, so kudos to that guy. But overall, that's going to go ahead and wrap up the meta-analysis. YCS London's going to be very interesting, because now that we have a somewhat defined meta, this is where we're going to start to see players make adjustments. This is where we're going to see, you know, how people are going to reconsider their options and kind of adapt and acclimate to this new format, and see if Thunder Dragons are really worthy of the hype that they've been getting thus far. Or was it just, you know, a one-hit wonder and Niagara was the event for Thunder Dragons? We'll just have to wait and see, but I think YCS London is going to be very, very interesting. But do keep in mind that Summon Sorcerers isn't legal, so it is going to be a little bit different than the US region of the TCG, but it's still going to be a very good tournament nonetheless. So guys, that's going to do it for the video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this meta-analysis overall. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you really found this video helpful, then consider supporting me via Patreon or becoming a YouTube channel member. Because just by showing your support in any way that you can, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.